So hi, I'm Kath and I'm working with SILT at the moment, and I'm going to be taking you through this assignment webinar together with my colleague Chengwen, who is here with me as well. So I'm just going to hand over to Chengwen to say hi and introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Chen Wen. I'm from the Academic Staff Development team at SILT, and thank you for joining us. Back to you, Kat.
Thanks, Chengwen. Right, so we have quite a lot of information that we're going to get through today. So you might find some of the parts go a little bit fast, but we are recording, so you can always come back and go through it again at your own pace, and we'll also share the slides with you as well. And seeing as we are quite a small number here today, if you have any queries as we're going along, you are welcome to either type into the text chat and we can address those questions, or raise your hand and we can talk to those at that time. Right, so today we are going to be dealing with assignments, and as you know, this is all about Amathuba, which is our brand new exciting platform that we're going to be using. Some people have started already and some people will be moving onto it in the upcoming year, but as things are constantly being updated and are somewhat in flux, we just let you know that the slides that we are showing you and the procedures and functionality is as it is at the moment, and if there are any improvements or refinements, we do update the slides and our subsequent webinars as well. So this is as it is at the moment, hot off the press. So today in this webinar, we are going to be covering how to create assignment categories and also create new assignments. Then within the new assignments, we're going to be look at some of the settings such as the availability dates and conditions, submissions and completion, evaluation and feedback. And then we're also going to be looking at some of the options you can use the action menu on. And we're also going to take a brief look at the annotation tool. Now, there are some other elements which are associated with assignments like rubrics could be used for marking, or Turnitin could be used for plagiarism detection. But as we have dedicated webinars which focus on those aspects, we're not going to deal with those aspects in depth today in this webinar. That is for another webinar which deals completely with those things. Right, so the assignment tool basically allows you to create and edit assignments. It also allows you to control the access to those assignments by date and time, or you can control the access by group membership, but that does require that you have set up the groups in advance. You can also create special access permissions. So if there are students or groups of students that need some special access outside of the designated dates and times, or maybe they need a longer time period to engage with the assignment, you can set that via special access permissions. We did talk about rubrics. You can associate assignments to rubrics as a marking mechanism. We're not going to delve into how to create those rubrics here. I'm just going to show you where you actually link the rubric. So if you want to know more about rubrics, please come back to our additional webinar that we will have, which will focus completely on rubrics. And then we're going to look at how to view and download the submissions. Downloading the submissions is not mandatory. It's just something you can do if you want to. And then how to return the submissions with grades and giving audio, video, or annotated feedback to the student. So the first thing, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, is how to actually get to Amathuba. And you can see that we have the link highlighted there in the top left-hand corner, which is amathuba.uct.ac.za. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with this login screen as well, where you would click on the blue UCT login area and enter your regular credentials that you use for all your network access and system access at UCT. So once you're logged in, you will be on what we call the home page. So this is probably also pretty familiar to you. And you will know that you can actually access your courses from various different places. So a lot of people use the area that's highlighted in red there, which is under My Courses. And this is a way of using these cards to actually access your courses. If you have a lot of courses, you might find that you have not enough space to see all particular cards, in which case you can use the waffle icon right at the top. And if you click on that, you will see the comprehensive list of all of your courses that are aligned to you or you have access to in some kind of capacity. And if there are a lot, there's also a search feature as well under the waffle icon to find your particular course where you would like to create an assignment. So to access your course, you can click on the card and then you will land on the home page of your course. So this is now the course home page. You're in a designated course at this point. Now, to find the assignment tool, you can find this under the activities option on the navigation menu at the top. So under activities, you'll see the first option says assignments. Another way, that is the quickest way to find it. Another way you could also find it would be to go to manage course and course admin, because under course admin, you'll find the links to every single tool that is available to your course. So let's pretend we've gone via activities and assignments. So when you think about an assignment, it kind of has a life cycle. And here we've sketched out what that is. So basically at the start of creating an assignment, you are going to think about things like the title, the instructions that you're going to give to your student, whether or not you need to give them some attachments as resources, and if you are also going to maybe record an audio or video instruction or resource for them. Then you're going to think about how to manage the availability. So that will be governed by things like the due and the start and the end dates. You could possibly, if you need to, have some kind of release conditions attached to this, which would also govern the availability. And then special access, it also comes into play here if there are students that need some designated additional requirements. Then once you have made this available and students have engaged with the assignment, you'll be thinking about how to collect the submissions. So is this assignment going to be an individual assignment? Is it for a group? And then how are you going to collect these submissions? Is it something where the students are going to be typing on the computer in line? Or is it something where they're going to be working on a file, like, for example, a Microsoft Word document or an Excel spreadsheet and submitting a digital file? Or it could even be something where they've written something on paper and they're actually not submitting anything, but you're just using the assignment tool to provide marks and feedback. Or it could be something where it is observed in person. So it might be something practical where they're going to be doing something practical for the assignment and you're going to walk around and provide marks to them through the assignment tool. And then you'd want to also think about whether it's a single or a multiple submission. So are you going to allow them multiple attempts to actually submit something and maybe even give them feedback in between, like kind of a draft submission? Or are you only going to allow one single submission? And then thinking about evaluating the submission. So is this something that is going to be awarded points, or is this just something where you just want to give them some feedback that's completely ungraded? You can also decide if you would want the grades to go into the grade book. It's not mandatory, but you can put them into the grade book, which is called Grades in Amatsuba. And we did talk a little bit about rubrics. You can also associate rubrics as a marking mechanism, and you can also have anonymous marking as well. And then providing feedback to the student. You do have access to an annotation tool, which I'm going to show you a little bit later on. And then you can decide whether you would like to add general feedback. You can also add video or audio feedback as well. And you can also email users with no submissions quite easily. So if you notice there's a bunch of students that haven't actually completed the assignment, you can actually email them all in one go and say, you know, the due date is approaching and I haven't seen any work, please submit your assignment. And then you can decide when you would like to publish this feedback. So in other words, you can draw up all of this feedback in advance in a kind of a draft state, and you can decide when you would like to publish it and make it available to the students. And then a very optional thing at the end is sometimes students like to build up a portfolio of evidence. So this is something you could think of that might want to go into some kind of portfolio at the end. So the first aspect we're going to talk about is assignment categories. So assignment categories are not mandatory. So I'm going to say that up front, they're not mandatory. But the reason why I like talking about them is it is a way of sorting and filtering your assignments, because as you go through the year, you'll probably end up with quite a lengthy lot of assignments that you've actually done over the course of the year. And there isn't really an effective way to hide certain assignments in your lecture review. So for example, if you've maybe created, say, 20 or 30 or 40 assignments, it can sometimes become difficult, slightly difficult to actually find the assignment that you actually want to work on at that particular time. So having categories is a way where you can actually group them together and then actually order the categories so that the ones you really want to focus on or find easily, you can actually push that category to the top and you can see those assignments really quickly. So you can set up these categories in advance, and you can also assign, if you've already created assignments, you can assign them to a category after they've been created. So the first thing that you're going to do to create a category is click on the Edit Categories button right at the top. It's quite intuitive. And once you click on Edit Categories, you'll come onto the next screen, which will show you that there's a button there that says Add Category. So you just click on that, you will get a pop-up window that says Create Category, and this is where you can add a name. So however you would like to create your categories, maybe you want to create them according to terms, maybe you want to have modules or units, or maybe week by week, whatever is a logical kind of subdivision for you to create your assignments in, that is what you can name those categories. If you decide afterwards, you want to adapt those names, you can always come in and refine those names. So you just click on Add Category, enter the name for your category, and then click on the Create button. And it's as easy as that to actually create a category. So once you have created a number of categories, so you can see in this example that we've got week 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you can decide to sort the order. So in the sort order column, you can see that I've got week 1 at the top being number 1, going all the way down 2, 3, 4, and 5, with week 5 being 5, and then just interesting to note that the next column over where it says in use. In use means there is an assignment in that category. If there is no tick in that column, like for example, week 2, it means I've created the category ready to go, but I haven't yet put any assignments into that category. So that's perfectly fine. You can have categories that contain no assignments, and this little tick or check box will actually indicate if there are assignments in that particular category. So now let's take a look at creating a new assignment. So when you are on the assignments page, if you have not created any assignments yet, it'll look pretty blank like this. And the easiest thing that you're going to do, you are going to be clicking on the new assignment button right at the top. So once you click on new assignments, I know this might look slightly complicated, but I've tried to color code it to make it a little bit more intuitive, to show the different areas that we are going to look at a little bit more in depth. So right at the top in the left-hand side in the blue outline, you can see title. Now you can see a small asterisk next to the title where it says name. So a title is mandatory. You have to have a title for your assignment. Then below that in the green block, you'll see the grading options. So you can have it ungraded or you can award points, and you can decide if you're going to go with points if you want them to put into the grade book or not. And then in this area is also the due date. So the due date is the date that it needs to be handed in by. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about dates in a little while. But if it's beyond the due date, then it would be seen as late. Then below that in the orange box, this is where your instructions would go. So this is where the bulk of the information would be, where you're going to be telling them exactly what they're going to be doing for this particular assignment. And then below that in the pink area is the area for the attachments. So this is optional. If you would like to add a resource or something that they need to reference, which will assist them with the assignment, this is the area to attach it. So you can see there that it could be an external file, it could be a web link to an external website, or it could be a link, a quick link to an existing resource that is within the course resources already. You can also record audio or record video here. So if you would like to have your instructions as a video, you could record it right here and make that available to the students. And then on the right-hand side in the red panel, on the right there, we have 3 important areas to look at. So the first one is the availability dates and conditions. Then below that, you'll have the settings for the submissions and completion. And below that, you have the evaluation and feedback. So at the moment in this screenshot, these are contracted, but we're going to go into each of those and expand them and see what settings are available below each of those. And then right at the bottom of the page, this is where you have your save or save and close buttons. And also it's the button on the right is the one that governs the visibility. So remember, at the moment, this is like a toggle switch. So on the right-hand side there, you can see with the eye with a little line through it, it means it's hidden. It's not visible to students at the moment. But if you toggle that, you'll see that it changes and it would be visible to students. So those are the important areas when you are first setting up a new assignment. Now we're going to go into each of those and have a little bit of a closer look at each of the settings available there. Right, so this first one we're looking at here is to do with grading options. So remember that we said it could be ungraded or it could have points. And if you elect to enter point value, so there I've just put 100, but you can choose any point value that you want to. You then have the option of choosing, do you want these points to go into the grade book? Or you want it to have points, but it's not going to go into the grade book, or you can decide to revert to something that is completely ungraded. So you can choose the bottom option that says reset to ungraded. So this is where you would decide how much the assignment is going to be out of. What grade are you going to be giving this? And now the attachment options, let's have a look at that. So we talked about where you can attach different items. So you can have a file upload. So if you've got something that you would like to upload and attach to this assignment as a resource, you could do that here. You can also add a link to an existing activity. So that would be like a quick link going to something that's already in your files for this course. And you can also add a web link. So a link to maybe an existing resource on the web, or maybe a complete website. That would be the third one along. And then we did mention that you can have record audio and record video as well. You can also, if you wanted to, have video and audio, and you'd already pre-recorded that, you could upload that as a file as well. So let's have a look at the first option here. If you wanted to upload a file, you would click on that first icon there, and it would ask you where you would like to attach the file from. And usually people choose My Computer because it's something that they have on their existing local computer that they want to upload and attach to this assignment. So you choose My Computer, and then in the next window, it would ask you to either drop the file onto that window, or you could browse for it and add it in there. And just to note that if you are uploading files, there is a file limit of a maximum of 2 gigs. So for one single file, it cannot be more than 2 gigs. Now, 2 gigs is really quite large. It's possible that you might have a video file of 2 gigs, but if it was that large for an assignment, it might be a reason for concern that your students may actually struggle to access this file. So please be mindful of the size of the file that you want to upload, and make sure it's something that's really accessible to the students. So that's how you would add a file from your computer and add it to the assignment. Now let's have a look on the next screen to how to add a link to an existing activity. So if you already had a resource that was sitting in your folders of this particular course, you choose the second option. It would pop up the familiar screen of inserting a quick link, and then you would decide where you would like to browse to actually find this resource. So it would give you the list of all the available course materials, and you would navigate to where that is, and it would attach to this assignment. And the third option, the next one we're going to look at, is adding a web link. So as we said, this is something that's existing and on the web already. So maybe you want them to go to a particular resource or a website. You would add in the URL. So the URL is the link, the web address where the resource is residing, and then the title. So say, for example, you wanted them to browse the UCT website, you would paste the web address in the top field, and in the second field under title, you would put something like University of Cape Town website, and then just click the insert button. Now, the next two options were recording audio and recording video. So if you're going to record audio, please note that you do need to allow Brightspace or Amatsuba to access your microphone, because they need to be able to hear what you're saying and capture that within the system. So you will see a pop-up that says allow access to your microphone, and you have to say allow. If you block, then it will actually close at that point and you won't be able to record your audio. So once you click allow, it'll pop up a little window with a button that says new recording. And as you can see there, it says 0 of 30. So that is the maximum time that you could do a recording. 30 minutes is really quite long. It's kind of in the region of thinking about the 2 gig file. So I think that's quite an adequate amount of time that you have to actually create a recording. And as I said before, there is an option, if you've already made a recording, to actually upload your file. So if you choose the option at the top there that says upload file, you need to make sure that your file is in one of the accepted formats, and you can see there that it's MP3, M4A, OGG, or WAV files. So make sure that if you've pre-recorded something, that it is one of those accepted formats. And then similarly, to record your video, now you would need to allow access to not just your microphone, but your camera as well. So if you're recording in the assignment using the record video option, you've got to allow for both of those things, camera and microphone. And similarly, once you click allow, you will get the record option, again, a 30-minute limit on recording that. And if you had pre-recorded something, you could use the upload file option at the top. And again, just to make sure that your file format is in the accepted formats. So have a look at those. They're the quite common ones of the MP4, the WebM, MOVs, FLVs, and F4Vs. So there's quite a few options of adding attachments in assignments, and quite a good variety. You can use some or all or none, up to you, but it does provide more information around the assignment for students. And just remember that large file sizes can sometimes cause problems for students who are accessing assignments depending on their internet strength and their location and their device. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat at the moment, but if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the text chat. Now let's have a look at availability dates and conditions. So to make the assignment available to students, let's see what options are available here. So remember that these settings we're looking at now are found in the right-hand panel, and we are now looking at the expanded view of the availability dates and conditions. So remember in the grading area, we saw that that is where you set the due date. So the due date is obviously, as the name implies, the date when the assignment, you would like the assignment to be handed in. So once you go and you set a date there and you click in the date field, you will see the little calendar pop up. So you can scroll through and select the date. And once you select the date, you will see that the time field appears as well. So on the right-hand side under start date and end date, you'll see that just the little calendar field is there at the moment. But as soon as you would click into those calendar fields and select a date, then the time becomes available. So there's three options there. So the due date, as we said, is the date you would like it to be handed in. And then the start and the end, as you can see, it's under availability. That means when the student will be able to see and access this assignment, and end means they will no longer be able to see and access it. So just to get the thought process clear behind the three different purposes of those dates. So start and end means the availability when a student will actually see the assignment and when they will no longer see it. And due is the date when you would like that assignment to be submitted. So for example, if you set an end date that is later than your due date, it means that the student will still have access to the assignment, but they'll be submitting after the due date, in which case the assignment would be marked as late. So it works slightly differently to Vula, and just to be mindful of the three different purposes of those dates. And then on the next slide, we're going to have a look at the release conditions. So these are completely optional. You do not have to put in release conditions, but this is if you wanted the student to have done something before being allowed access to this assignment. Sometimes people want to make sure that students have done certain things prior to actually gaining access to the assignment, and this is when you would actually make use of release conditions. So to add a release condition, you would click on the drop-down list that says add release condition and select the create new. Once you selected create new, you would have a little pop-up window which asks you to create the release condition. And there are already a variety of different ones that you can choose from. So under condition type, you would click the drop-down list, and this is just some of the ones which are available. So say, for example, you wanted your student to definitely have completed all the elements on a particular checklist, you would select that option which says completed checklist. And that would mean that they would have had to have completed the designated checklist before they even had access to this particular assignment. So it's something useful to know that it's there, this feature, but it's absolutely not mandatory, but could be used to good advantage if you needed students to complete something before they gained access to this particular assignment. And the third thing under availability dates and conditions that we spoke about was special access. So under special access, this is where you allow students access outside of the normal availability dates that you've actually set. So say, for example, there was a student that was unable to do this within the designated time frame for some particular legitimate reason, and they'd contacted you about it, you could set up a special access for the student without having to change the dates for everybody. So the way to do that would be to click on the Manage Special Access button under the Special Access area in the right-hand panel. You would then be presented with a pop-up window where you've got two options. So just to understand these two options carefully. So the first one says allow users with special access to submit outside the normal availability dates. And then the second one says allow only users with special access to see this folder. So you need to choose carefully which of those options apply in your particular circumstances that you want to give special access to. Then you would click the add users to special access. This is where you're going to specify the users that need the special access. So once you click add users to special access on the next screen, you'll be able to see a window is going to pop up where you are going to select. So here you can see you would either say the due date is different or the start date or the end date for this particular user or group of users. So in this instance, we're going to say that this one has a different end date. So we're going to allow this particular person to see or have access to the assignment beyond what the others have. So we choose end date. And then below that, you assign the user or in the view by drop down, you can change that to group. So if you had a group of people that needed special access, you could change it to group and then assign this particular special access to everybody in that group. So here we're looking at an individual, which is designated by a user. You can see view by user. You would see a list of people in your course, and you would just check the checkbox in front of the particular user you would like to apply the special access to, and then click Save. So once you had saved that, it would confirm on the pop-up window that this particular student that you had selected has now got an extended availability on the end date. And if it wasn't correct, you could always on the right-hand side use the little pencil to actually make any edits, or if it was completely wrong and not applicable anymore, you could click on the X, which would actually delete that special access. You would then just click Save and Close, and that special access would have been granted to that particular student. Now let's take a look at the submissions and completion. So again, this is something that you're going to find in the right-hand panel on the assignment setup. So this is the submissions and completion area in the right-hand panel. And this is where you can designate the assignment type. So is it going to be for an individual? Everybody is going to be doing it. Or is it going to be for a group? So just to note that if you are going to assign it to a group, you must have already created your groups using the group tool, because you need to have put your students into those groups to align the assignment to the designated groups. Then below that, you can see here is categories. So these are the categories I was talking about right at the beginning, where you can actually use categories to kind of group your assignments together to make it easier for you to find. So at the moment, you'll see it defaults to no category. So if you'd already set up categories, you could use the drop-down list here and align this particular assignment to a given category. And remember, if you decide not to do it at this stage, you can always come back in again and put an assignment into a category. Also under the submissions area is where you decide what kind of submission type you would like to allow. So you can see there's 4 different types. You can have a file submission. So in other words, the students are actually going to upload or submit a digital file of some sort. You can decide to have a text submission. So text submission would be also known as an inline submission. That means they're going to type up their submission into the field on the actual assignment page. You can have an on-paper submission. So in other words, the students have submitted something to you. It's on paper, but you are going to use the assignment tool in this instance to provide them feedback, or observed in person. Like we said, if it's something practical where they are doing something practical and you're walking around and giving marks, again, you would use this tool to provide digital feedback on something that was observed in person. So you can decide which submission type you would like to allow. And then you can also decide whether you would like to have one file or unlimited files. So for example, if they were uploading a Word document, would you want the assignment to all be contained within one single file, or would you be happy with multiple different files all making up the assignment submission? Then one of the important settings is under the allowable file extensions. So if you're going to be willing to accept all sorts of submissions, so for example, say it was you could have PDF files, or you could have Word files or text files, then you would choose the first option that says no restrictions. But there are some other options you can choose here. You can force them to only submit PDFs or annotatable files, or files that can be previewed without conversion, or image and videos, or you can also have custom file types. So custom file type allows you to define the allowable file extension. So if there was an assignment where you have a particular file that you would like the students to submit, and it's in a particular format. Maybe it's a particular drawing program that you're using and you know it has a very distinct file extension, you could designate a custom file type and force them to only submit that particular file type as their assignment submission. And then under submissions, just to note those options there, they're also, again, slightly different to Vula if you're familiar with the Vula options for submission. So the first one says all submissions are kept. So that would mean that you would be allowing multiple submissions and you're going to keep all of those submissions. The second option says only one submission allowed. So that's pretty self-explanatory. They make a single submission and that's it. They're no longer able to submit. And the third option says only the most recent submission is kept. So again, that's referring to allowing multiple submissions, but you're going to ignore all of the previous ones and only look at and mark and keep the final submission. So every subsequent submission overwrites their previous submissions. And then the last element there at the bottom, notification email, that Nadine.
My apologies.
Okay, no problem. No problem at all. So under notification email, you'll see there that you can enter an email or multiple emails separated by a comma if you would like to receive notifications when assignment is submitted. So if you would like to know as these submissions are coming in, you could put your email there. If you have a lot of students, it might not be a good idea to put your email there because you would get a lot of notifications for each submission. So that is looking at file submission. And then on the next screen, we're going to have a quick look at the text submission. So if you wanted them to actually type their submission onto the assignment page, not a lot of people do this because it does take quite a bit of time for students to type, and some students are more efficient at typing than others. But you can elect to have a text submission. And as you can see, the other subsequent settings for submission, many or one, and notification emails remain the same for a text submission as well. And then on the next screen, we're going to have a look at the options for a paper submission. So a paper submission obviously means that the student has handed in a paper, but you're using the assignment tool to provide the feedback. So you now get a new option there under marked as complete. So because it's not being triggered by a submission, you can elect for the learners or the students to manually mark it as complete, or you can mark it complete as automatically on evaluation or automatically on the due date. So because it's not being triggered by a submission, you decide how you would like to have this marked as complete. And these same settings are available for the observed in person option as well, because obviously observed in person would not be triggered by a file submission to the system as well. On the next screen, you'll be able to see that. So this is just a very short animation that actually shows you going through setting up an assignment title, deciding whether it's graded or ungraded, putting in a due date, and providing instructions as well in the main area. And remember to always use the toggle for the visibility to make sure that it's visible to your students so they can actually access this as well. And save and close will actually save at that point. Right, we're going to have a look at the next section now. I'm just going to check if there's any questions that people would like to raise. Liz, I see you've unmuted.
Sorry, Cass, very bad with Zoom. Can't find a hand. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway,
No problem.
I'm trying to understand that if we are, I decided that I would do one file only, but then I hadn't realized that only the most recent submission is kept. Because what I did in Vula was to allow resubmission up until the due date.
Right.
So I wouldn't be able to instill that on Unlimited, would I? It would be constantly, they can constantly submit essays until the closing date.
Yeah, so they can still do that, but then you can decide whether you would like to keep all of the submissions or only the final one. So in your Vula context, did you ever consult or provide feedback on the kind of, let's call them draft submissions, the ones prior to the final?
No, it's mostly when people like they email me and say, I've attached my shopping list. Here is
Okay.
my
Here's the
here
real
is my
deal.
essay. Can you open Vula for me?
Okay. Yeah, so in that instance, yeah, so you could leave it as multiple submissions, but only keep the final one. If somebody has done that, like you've just given a scenario now, attached the wrong file essentially, and now potentially the assignment is no longer available to them to submit, or you have not allowed them to resubmit, you could always add them as special access and say this particular student is allowed to submit until that date, and just that designated student would be able to go in and re-upload their proper file.
Perfect.
That would be a way around that.
Yeah, so we go one file. That's great. And then, sorry, one last question on notification email. So I always obviously keep that blank because I have very large courses. But then once the cutoff date, once it's closed, I then put my email address in so that I can catch any strange things or conveners who've given extensions, but they haven't told me. So I could then, you know, this is all save and close, but then once the assignment is closed, I can come back into this. And then if I put my email in, will I then get emails thereafter?
Correct, yes. So once you've actually added your email, exactly as you've said, anything subsequently, once you kind of activated that and made your email available in the notification area, if there was somebody that came in and gave someone special access and a submission came in, you would be notified, correct?
Super. Thank you very much.
Sure, no problem. Right, let's take a look at evaluation and feedback. So as we mentioned at the start, there's quite a few options available to you for providing feedback to the student. So first of all, let's take a look at the basic ones, which you'll find in the right-hand panel again under evaluation feedback. First of all, you can attach rubrics. So if you had a rubric drawn up or you were going to use a rubric, this is where you would attach it at this stage. Remember, we're not going to delve into this too much because we do have a dedicated rubric webinar, which we're going to be dealing with this later on. And then under annotation tools, it says here, make annotation tools available for assessment. Now, this is a very handy one to mark that checkbox, because it means if you get submissions like, for example, Word documents or PDFs, you are able to use the annotation tool here within Amatuba and provide comprehensive feedback to the student where they'll actually see all the notes that you've put on their assignment. And then the anonymous marking option is also found here under evaluation and feedback, and that is to hide the students' names during assessment. So it doesn't mean that you won't ever know who submitted which assignment. It just means during the assessment stage, when you actually apportioning the marks or going through the submission and using the annotation tool, you don't see the students' names at that point. Obviously, if marks are going to be apportioned to a student or even captured in gradebook, the system would need to know which student had submitted which assignment and which marks were apportioned to which student. So you are able to still see which student has submitted which assignment, but during the assessment stage, it just masks or hides the student name at that point. And this is where you would also elect to add Turnitin integration if you want to. Again, we're not going to delve into this at this stage because we do have a dedicated Turnitin webinar, which is happening later on. So this is the evaluation and feedback area in the right-hand panel. And then on the next, we are going to look at the action menu options. So action menus, when you are on the assignment page, you will find those at the top under the drop-down list. So here we are on the assignment page, and we're looking at, I've got one week 1 category there, and you can see under week 1, there's a week 1 assignment that I've drawn up. So at the top, on the right-hand side, you can see it says more actions. So when you click the drop-down list under more actions, you will find a drop-down list where you can see preview, reorder, event log, and then make visible to users, hide from users, and delete. So the bottom 3 that are in the red box, make visible, hide, and delete, those are what we call multi-action functions. So they need to be used in conjunction with selecting a particular assignment or using the box at the top, which says select all. So in order to apply any of those 3 options at the bottom there, you need to have made a selection using the checkbox, either using a single one next to a designated assignment or the one right at the top that selects all of your assignments. And that is when you can apply either make visible, hide, or delete. And the top 3 options there, preview, reorder, and event log, we're going to have a quick look at those because they are quite useful functions. So the first one, preview, as the name implies, it allows you to actually quickly preview the assignment. So basically see it as the student would see it, to make sure that everything is laid out as you intend and the instructions are clear. And it also at the top there has a checkbox that says bypass any restrictions on submitting to assignments. So in other words, if you had put any restrictions in place like special conditions, or release conditions, if you had this checked, that means that you could actually still see the assignment in this preview mode without having to actually go through those special release conditions. So make sure that you check that if you have any special release conditions or access conditions on your assignment so that you can successfully preview it. And on the next screen, you'll be able to see the reorder option. So this kind of goes in conjunction with the categories. So I remember that I said you could use categories to group your like assignments together, so it makes it really easy for you to find, and you can also order your categories. So say, for example, you had a category which you called maybe in progress or draft or whatever works for you, and you kept all of your assignments that you were actually still busy drawing up at the moment, and you decided to put that category right on top because those are the ones that you always wanted quick access to. Within that, you could also decide to order the assignments that are within a category, and this, similar to the way that you sort the order for categories, you can sort the order for actual individual assignments as well. And you can see in this view, you're looking at it what we call the expanded view, because you can see the categories and you can see the assignments contained within those categories. You'll see next to that where it says collapse all, you can actually view the collapsed version where you just see the high level categories and not the assignments within the categories if you just want to work with those. So this is what a collapsed view would look like. You can just see the categories, and this is an option to actually sort the categories. So you'll see right at the top, by default, you will see something that says no category. So when you first arrive on assignments, all of your assignments will be without category, for example, no category. So no category always sits at the top. So you can see on the right-hand side, you have no option to actually change the order of no category. No category always sits right at the top. So if you want to eliminate that, having that no category always at the top and not being able to move it, then I would suggest you create categories and move all of your assignments into categories where you can determine where your categories are and which one is on top, and nothing is going to sit in a no category zone. And the next thing we're going to take a look at after that is the event log. So just to note that an event log is actually a history of the actions that you have taken in the assignment area. It's not the students, it's you. It's what you have been doing within the assignments. And you'll see there at the top left, there are actually three ways of viewing this, three filtered views you can look at. So you can look at all the things you've created, or all the things you've deleted, or all the things you have restored. So yes, you can restore things. So if you delete something by accident, you can actually go here and restore things as well. So this will give you the list of everything you've created, deleted, or restored. Or if you click either of those headings at the top left, you will see just the created, just the deleted, or just the restored items. That is the event log. Now, the next thing we're going to take a look at is on an assignment itself, you have a drop-down list as well. And you can see there's quite a few options that you can actually select from. But three important ones that I'd like to draw your attention to are the view submissions, delete assignment, and submission log. Going to have a look at those three quickly. So on a particular assignment, view submissions is quite self-explanatory. You're going to be able to see all the submissions that have come in for that particular assignment. So here you'll be able to see the list of people who have submitted, when they've actually completed it, and if you've already given some feedback, that will be noted in the right-hand column under evaluation and feedback. And if you've published it, remember, published means you've actually made it available to the student, then that will be noted there as well. Interesting to see here some additional options that you have. Again, these are what we call the multi-action functions, where you can email, mark as complete, mark as incomplete, or publish feedback for individual or multiple students all at one time. So again, because these are multi-action functions, you do need to use the check boxes in front of the designated student names, or the one right at the top, which will select all of the students before applying any of these actions. Then the next one we're going to have a look at is if you decide to delete an assignment, say you want to get rid of it, you would just select the checkbox in front of that particular assignment and then opt to delete it. You will get a confirmation message making sure that you really do want to delete this. And once you are convinced that this is for the deletion, you can click the delete button. Remember that you can always go back to the event log that we had a look at, and you will see when you deleted something. And in most instances, there is an option to restore something if you've deleted it by mistake.
Sorry,
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
I've had my first view now of viewing submissions on your screen.
Right.
I notice it comes up with last name, first name. Surely student numbers come up there too, would they?
Yeah, I'm just thinking if there's an option to actually add the student number as well. I know when you go into when you actually are marking things, you can actually see that as well. Are you thinking about students who may have the same names, essentially?
Yes, I mean, I get a lot of certain names, and
Right.
often first names and surnames that are the same.
Similar. Yes. Yeah.
And
I will check into that to see if you can actually add a field to view. I know that in Gradebook you can do that. You can opt to have either names or student numbers and student numbers.
right.
But I'm just not sure if you can actually do that in the assignment view as well. But I do know when you're actually marking it, and you obviously haven't hidden the names, then you can actually see in more detail the actual, who the actual submission is from, if it is somebody with a name that is similar or identical to somebody else's name. But I do know that that is something that does occur at UCT quite a bit, and that is why student numbers are quite useful to make that distinction. Thanks for bringing that up, Liz.
Thanks very much.
Right, so you can delete assignments, and via the event log, you can also restore them as well. And then the submission log, you can see that this looks somewhat similar to the event log, but the submission log is the log of the actions that the students have taken, their submission into this assignment area. So similar to the event log, you have these options at the top left to filter the view by seeing all of the submitted, all of the deleted, all of the restored, and all of the started. So you can see here that in the second column under event, it actually shows you when somebody has started and when they've actually submitted. So you could actually filter by event using those options at the top left-hand side. One of the handy options, which is also a multi-action again, so you're either going to select an individual assignment or you're going to select all of the assignments using the select all checkbox right at the top left-hand corner, is you can use the bulk edit. So when you click on bulk edit after you've made your selection using the checkboxes against an individual assignment or all of the assignments, on the next screen, you'll be able to see that using bulk edit, this is really quite handy because here you can change some of the real essential details of all of the assignments that you have selected. So you can change the categories, you can put things into categories, you can change the titles of the assignments, and you can also change the start, end, and due dates and times as well. So if you decided you needed to kind of change categories or maybe slightly tweak the names of assignments to make it more logical, adding numbers or dates, you could do that here using the bulk edit option. So it's really handy to be able to have this. And once you've made all of your required changes, you would just click the save button right at the very bottom. Just to let you know that the icons which appear next to your assignment, you can see that the top ones, the first one is release conditions, and the second one is a group aligned assignment. If you have a little icon that looks like many people, the one with the eye with the line through it means it's hidden, and the one with the little key means there's some kind of special access granted for that particular assignment. The one with the little icon that looks like a mask and a document, that is a Turnitin enabled assignment, and the one right at the bottom is an associated with a grade item. So that particular assignment is feeding the mark through to gradebook. So that's how to quickly interpret the icons that you see next to the various assignments. We're going to go really, really quickly through the annotation tools because they are fairly self-explanatory, and we're slightly over time, although we started a few minutes late. So really briefly through the annotation tools, remember that I told you that there's a checkbox under evaluation and feedback where it says make annotation tools available for assessment. So if you have checked that box, once you get submissions coming in, you will see that you have access to the annotation tools where you can provide really comprehensive feedback to students. So on the next screen, you'll be able to see that it would look like this. You would see the submission coming in, and you would use the tools. So if you've used something like in Adobe PDF where you have used some of the annotation tools, it's very, very similar. You can change colors. You can have quite a palette of colors there, and you have shapes, you have arrows, ticks, crosses. You can outline things, circle things, and add text in as well. So quite a comprehensive palette of tools that you can actually use, and all of the elements that you add onto this submission here, the student would be able to see all of those on the page exactly as you are annotating them. Then on the right-hand side, that is where, if you had used a rubric, remember we're going to talk about this in another webinar, that is where you would find your rubric if you are using that to provide feedback. Below that is where you would enter your overall grade, where you would provide a grade. And then you could also give additional overall feedback here as well. So you can see it's the rich text editor. So if you want to give really comprehensive feedback using headings and bullet points or numbered points, you could do so in this overall feedback area. And then right at the bottom, you could, in addition, add additional feedback as well by attaching a file or a course file or a web link, or even recording some audio feedback or some video feedback as well. So a lot of different options to provide really comprehensive, rich feedback to the students. If you didn't want to make this available to the student at this stage, you would click the Save Draft button at the bottom right. If you would like to make this available to the student immediately, you would click the Publish button. So remember, publish means it's accessible to the student. You're making it available to the student. And just briefly, some resources and support, if you would like to know where those are. There are some really lovely updated resources which are available on the SILT website. We'll also send you these links. There are quite a few text and video resources as well. There is also an assignment tool guide which has been drawn up, which will provide you the link to as well. And we have dedicated resources for staff and for students as well. And as we kind of go through these webinars and as things are more refined, these will be added to and updated as we go along. If you need more assistance, you are welcome to contact the SILT-help desk at uct.ac.za. And if you have any other questions or feedback, there's an email address there you can use, which is amatuba@uct.ac.za. And please review all the resources, which as I said, I'm constantly being updated and added to, which you can find on the SILT website under the Amatuba link. There is a big link on the homepage, so it's quite easy to find that. Right, thank you very much for attending this webinar. And I know that's been a bit of a whirlwind tour through the use of the assignment tool. If you have any further questions, you're welcome to unmute now and ask if you have any questions. If you think of anything subsequently, please use those email addresses and we will follow up with these slides and the recording and links to resources after this webinar. Thank you very much for being here. And I'd like to say thank you very much to Chengwen as well for driving the slides so efficiently.